Calling all home buyers. If you're a home buyer and you've been sitting on the sidelines, this episode is for you. I'm going to break down my top 4 wins that I'm seeing in the real estate market that I think could benefit you in buying your next home. Let's dive in.
You're listening to the Girl, Get Your Face Off a Bus Bench podcast, where we invite you to check your ego at the app, grab a cup of coffee, and get ready to dive into all things real estate marketing, social media, friendship, hardship, love, money mindset, and all the things that celebrate you as a badass boss babe.
We're here to encourage you, show up for you, give you a loving kick in the pants when you need it most, and be your soft place to land on the hardest of days. So pull up a seat at our table and get ready to be inspired and start living your best life by design.
Welcome to the Girl, Get Your Face Off a Bus Bench podcast. We are so excited you're here.
Okay, girls, let's dive in. Hey, Bus Bench babes. It's here. We're doing a solo episode, and we're talking all about buyer wins in this fall real estate market. And there's a lot of buyers sitting on the sidelines. They've been sitting on the sidelines for a while, and it makes sense. It totally does. I'm seeing this day in and day out. There's a lot of buyers that kind of like dip their toe in the buying pond in the, kind of like in that middle of COVID, 2021, 22, 23. And the market was still so competitive that if you really didn't have to buy and you were just maybe thinking about it, maybe you dipped your toe in the pond and you're like, whoa, I do not want to be in mega multiple offers. I don't want to have to give up my firstborn in order to buy a house. And I joke about that, but I mean, it was pretty cutthroat there for a while. And not everybody loved that, not being able to have an inspection, having to feel like you gave up everything as a buyer in order to win a home. It just didn't feel good for a lot of buyers. And so a lot of buyers are like, I'm just going to sit this out. I'm going to wait for the sky to fall. I'm going to wait for a market crash. I'm going to wait for, XYZ, fill in the blank of whatever that might be. And there's a lot of buyers that are still sitting on the fence today, waiting to see what's going to happen. So this episode is for you buyers. If you're sitting on the fence, or maybe you already bought and maybe you're living in a home that doesn't serve your family anymore. And you're like, okay, we want to move, but we don't know what's happening for buyers right now. The question that I get literally all the time, Beth, how's the market? I was at a Rotary picnic last night and had 3 different people. How's the real estate market? How's it going? How's your business? And I really like to think of stay positive and think of all the good things happening, but there's plenty of doom and gloom. If you want to focus on doom and gloom, it's out there. I just choose to not focus on that. And I look for what are the things that are wins? And there's things that are wins in my market that might not be the same if you are in California, or if you're in Kansas City, or if you're in Boston. They might be totally different than what's happening here in the Twin Cities. But I'm going to talk about what's happening here in the Twin Cities and sort of the Midwest overall. And just to give you a better idea of what the market looks like, wins that I'm seeing out there, and wins that I'm actually seeing out there because I'm in the trenches day in and day out, and how that can help prepare you, the buyer, to feel good about moving forward and making a decision on buying your next home. So let's just jump in. I'm going to do my top 4 list. So we're going to just jump right in. All right, let's jump in. Number 1, seasonality. I would say overall, we have less seasonality in the Twin Cities and in the Midwest than what we used to back in the day. And I think a lot of people still think that people in the Midwest and people in Minnesota don't sell their homes in the middle of the winter, but they do. They still do. We may have less homes coming on the market, but that's not to say that people don't move in the dead of winter all the time. What I mean by less season, or the seasonality and the timing of things, is that a lot of sellers that are on the market right now are selling their homes because they have to. They're choosing to sell, and they don't want to be on the market over the winter. They would prefer to sell now versus the spring. And it's kind of those two camps right now with my sellers. I have sellers that are like, yep, we want to sell now. Like before snow flies, before all the leaves fall off the trees and we have to do yard work 10 more times, we want to sell now. And then I have some of those other sellers that are like, we're just going to wait till spring. And that's a whole nother topic. But the spring market doesn't mean like March and April. Spring market in the Twin Cities now is meaning like right after Super Bowl. We're talking like February. And so like that's a totally different conversations that I'm having with sellers. But like you'll notice this as a buyer. You might be like, well, there isn't quite as many homes on the market right now. There are a lot of vacant homes on the market. I show vacant homes so often where like I'll do a tour with clients and we'll be out seeing 6 homes and 5 of them will be vacant. Well, those are the sellers that want to sell. They don't want to have to go back and worry about a pipe bursting in the winter because the furnace stopped. They don't want to have to go back and shovel the driveway. They don't have to go back and like blow all the leaves or rake the leaves. So the homes that are on the market right now, many times it's because the sellers have to sell or they really want to sell this fall. And if there's a home that's sitting vacant, I always say like pay attention to those. And if it's been on the market for a hot second, maybe you're having a hard time like envisioning what it could look like. Vacant homes don't show as great as homes that are staged, right? That's just that's a matter of fact thing. And so that might be a place for you as a buyer to get a win and to be able to score a home, perhaps less than what the seller's asking for, or give you some leverage to be able to negotiate things on the inspection. Maybe it's sitting there because there's some stuff wrong with it. Well, could you negotiate with the seller and get a good deal on that house versus waiting till spring and then competing with a bunch of other buyers that are like, ooh, we're going to buy a house in the spring. Something to think about, something to look at. Number 2, I love that this market right now is giving buyers opportunity to do more due diligence. I think that's what the 2021, 22, 23 market really stressed out buyers is because you looked at a house and you had 5 minutes to decide, am I buying it or not? And then in order to win it in mega multiple offers, you didn't get a whole lot of options. You had to forego your inspection. You probably had to do an appraisal gap coverage. You probably had to do an escalation clause. You had to, just name it. You're basically buying a house and just saying, okay, sellers, you have all the leverage. I have no leverage as a buyer, but I want to buy this house. And so whatever, I'll just do it. That's not the market we're in right now. And that's not to say that there aren't homes that are totally competitive and there's not multiple offers happening, because there are, and we're seeing that like slowly tick up as rates come down. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But just having a little bit more breathing room to make some decisions and being able to have a sewer scope and having, someone get up on the roof and check the roof, which is, that's a whole hot button these days. Just having a little bit more time to do your due diligence and being able to have more peace of mind moving forward with your purchase, I think is a really, really big win right now. We have some first-time homebuyers under contract right now with our team, and like they're asking so many good questions. I'm loving it. We did a buyer consultation. They've been very strategic with their timing. We were able to look at a whole bunch of houses. And then they kind of narrowed it down to 2. And then one of them went under contract, like within a split second. And so the other one was not in multiple offers, which was awesome. So we were able to offer a really fair price for the house. We were able to have an inspection. We were able to get the sewer scoped. We were able to do all those things that are really giving the buyers peace of mind to be able to move forward with their first time home purchase. And we were able to ask for a couple of things in the inspection that a couple of years ago, I don't think we would have been able to do. I don't think we would have been able to get the seller to agree to that. So it's just giving buyers a little bit more time to make sure they're feeling really good about moving forward with the home buying process. And I couldn't love this more for buyers. I think this really makes people feel more comfortable with the process as a whole. Number 3, talking about right now, we have a slower pace of appreciation. You might be like, oh, Beth, well, that doesn't seem like a good thing. I would say during COVID and when home prices were going up, there was a big article in the home section kind of in the height of COVID. I can't even remember what year, somewhere between 21 and 23. And it talked about home prices in the Twin Cities had gone up. I want to say it was like 15%. It was like well into the double digits. And I'm like, like the previous year, homes had gone up like 17%. The number was stupid numbers and super awesome, right? If you own a home, you're like, yeah, my home just went up, like a double digit percentage in value. But for the buyer that's buying a home and they're already feeling pressured to make a decision in a split second, they're not getting to get a home inspection, they're waiving this, that, and everything else just to buy a home. And then homes are going up so rapidly, even on homes that were like crappy homes. You're like, this doesn't feel good. And what that induces in buyers, sellers, real estate professionals, everybody, just the average consumer, is that doesn't feel sustainable and it feels like it's setting us up for a market crash. So like if that were to have gone on like indefinitely, I think that just sets everybody up for failure. And while the median home in the Twin Cities went over $400,000 for the first time ever, we don't want homes appreciating double digits every year. And so like I was working in an open house and I was trying to think, it was fall and it was like fall of 22, 23. And some buyers came into the open house and I'm just, making small talk, just trying to sniff them out, see like what they're looking for. Are they going to be a good fit for us to buy our listing? And I said, oh, do you live in the area? And they're like, yeah, we're renting in the area. I'm like, oh, really? And they're like, yeah, we sold our house last year. So they sold their house like for top dollar. And well, at the time that was top dollar and they had been sitting in a rental for a year. And what had happened is like they were sitting in a rental for that stretch when homes went up about 15% in value. And so they wanted to be in Chanhassen, which is a really desirable part of the Twin Cities. And now they're nearly priced out of the market. They sold their house, what they thought was a top dollar. And now they said, we're kicking ourselves because if we would have still been in our house, we would be sitting on so much more equity. 10 to 15% more equity. And they said, and now the homes that we want to buy we really can't afford them. And I'm like, ooh, that probably doesn't feel good. We talk about this a lot on the podcast too. It's really hard to time the market, right? Like if we all had a crystal ball, like I wouldn't be selling real estate if I had a crystal ball. Like, I don't know what I'd be doing, but if I could just predict what the future would be, I'd be dabbling in a lot more things. Do you feel me on that? And so like these particular sellers/buyers, they were kicking themselves that they thought they had timed the market correctly. And maybe they got bad advice. Maybe they just had a hunch, but they said, we thought the market was too high. And so we're like, we're going to sell and get top dollar. We're basically waiting for the market to crash. And I'm like, well, I mean, newsflash, that's not happening. And they're like, yeah, we're seeing that now. So I feel like it's a win right now for buyers is that we're seeing like normal appreciation. We're seeing like 2, 3, 4, 5% appreciation. That feels normal. I'm using air quotes, but that's more of like a normal appreciation here in the Midwest instead of those double digit appreciations. So when you buy a home, is it likely still going to go up in value? Yeah, the trends tell us, historically homes appreciate. And so just depends on what's happening in the marketplace, what's happening in the financial sector, what's happening with interest rates, what's happening with supply and demand will affect how, what your appreciation is from year to year. But I think right now, the fact that homes are just appreciating at like a steady pace is super helpful and a really big win for buyers instead of like, 10% 10%, 15% year over year. We had some other buyers that would be buyers, and they're like, we're just going to sit it out for a little bit. And they had signed, we looked at a few houses and they're like, yeah, Beth, this is just, we don't love like how competitive things are. And this was a couple years back, of course, when things were like super crazy, like white hot market. And they said, we're just going to sit it out for a second and we're just going to renew our lease. And then come to find out they renewed their lease for 2 years. And I'm like, guys, like, do you have an option to get out of your lease? And I'm like, I don't know that this is the best idea. And they're like, it was just too stressful. And I'm like, okay, I get it. And then, 2 years later, all of a sudden you're like, they can't afford the house that they originally thought that they could afford because interest rates crept up, values crept up. And all of a sudden that same house that they're looking at or that they were looking at is all of a sudden worth more than what they want to pay for it. So I can't tell you what to do. I can only give you the information, help educate you the best way that I know how. And then you need to make the decision that's best for you, because obviously it never feels good when anyone's pressured into making a decision, right? But I really love to see that appreciation is just back to a little bit more of like a normal pace. And I think that really is a win for buyers. Number 4, I like that buyers are getting, they're getting incentives. They're getting, this goes back and this sort of ties in with time to do the due diligence, but buyers are getting options, especially if homes are sitting on the market. Sellers are getting really creative. Like, what can we do? Can we offer incentives for updating the home? Maybe the vibe is totally outdated and they're like, well, here's some flooring allowance, or here's a little allowance for this or that. Sellers are putting on brand new roofs. We have buyers right now that they're getting they already got a brand new roof. The roof was totally fine, but it was older. And so before the sellers went on the market, they had a conversation with their agent, and the agent's like, well, roofs are the hot button right now. So if we want to avoid that being a conversation in our home inspection, let's take a look at that. And so they had their insurance adjuster out. It didn't qualify for a new roof, unfortunately, but they just took the gamble and they put a new roof on the house. That's a total win for my buyers. Now all of a sudden they have a brand new roof, like a roof that's like less than a month old. That's a freaking win. How about getting credits from the sellers to help with closing costs? How about getting credits from the sellers to buy down the interest rate? Do a 2-1 buy down or a 3-1 buy down so you can get a better interest rate for 2 years, 3 years. I've seen sellers like offering association dues paid for a year. Like, there's a lot of things that are creative little things that sellers are doing that are total wins for buyers right now. In addition to being able to have inspections, being able to do your due diligence, like really look over the association documents, get the sewer scoped, have radon tested, like all those things. Sellers are also offering all these spiffs, which I think are fabulous. So are there wins in the market right now? I think so. Is there also a lot of distraction in the market right now? Also, yes, there's a lot of noise going on right now. There's a lot of distraction. When you turn on the news and they're talking about NAR lawsuits, and then as a buyer, you're like, well, I don't even know what NAR is. Yep, that's the National Association of Realtors getting sued by, big law firms that are hoping to capitalize. And lawsuits are distractions. I feel like that settled down quite a bit, but that was a lot of noise for a lot of years. And then now the biggest, I would say, distraction that broke this week, this will be a couple week old information once you're listening to this podcast. Compass, a big, large broker in the country that was nearly bankrupt a couple years ago, like they were hemorrhaging money, now has acquired capital, and they have done a billions of dollars deal and are swooping up a bunch of other real estate brands. Well, if you're not in the trenches day in and day out, that might seem like a lot of noise, and it is a lot of noise. I think it's a big distraction for real estate agents also, but it's also a distraction for home sellers and buyers. I always say, I don't think it really matters the brand of real estate company that you work for. So I've had a couple of people recently that they're like, oh, EXP, I've never heard of them. And I'm like, oh, interesting. I'm like, we're one of the fastest growing brokerages in the country right now. But it doesn't really matter. Like, I feel like the brokerage where I work is a holding place for my license. I've built this beautiful brand. We have all the tools in place to serve clients at the highest level. So it doesn't matter what brokerage that I'm at. Like, people are working with me and the BPR experience and the team because we offer a level of service that they're looking for. We get them the outcome that they want. We're doing real estate only better. And that's part of the tagline. Everybody knows a real estate agent. So how can we as the BPR experience leave or like end a transaction with a customer and have them go, oh my gosh, I have bought and sold a lot of houses and this was the best real estate experience I've ever had. That was the whole point of the BPR experience. That's the reason why we named the team that. And real estate only better. I want everybody to feel that, like, yeah, I bought and sold before, but this was the best experience I've ever had. So don't get sucked into the noise. The noise is simply that. It's a distraction. It's noise. It's meant to, just get people all spun up and rattled. The news is pretty doom and gloom in general. So if you're thinking about buying or selling, if you're in the Twin Cities, I would love to have a conversation with you and see how our team can help you. If you're somewhere else in the country listening to this episode and you're like, wow, it sounds like there are some good wins. I don't know specifically if all of these 4 will translate into the area where you are, but I would love to connect you with an agent that operates like how the BPR experience does and really comes from contribution and loves to educate. And they can tell you exactly what's going on in your part of the country and just hold your hand and guide you to the finish line on your next purchase. Share this episode if you found this helpful, and maybe you have a friend or family member that's thinking about buying a home in the next 6 months to a year. Share this episode with them too. We would love that. So until next time, Bus Bench babes, keep your face off a bus bench and keep being the badass boss babes that you are.
Okay, girls, are you feeling as inspired as we are? We're over here cheering you on because you just finished another episode of the Girl, Get Your Face Off a Bus Bench podcast.
If you want more, head over to girlgetyourfaceoffabusbench.com for show notes and more episodes. And don't forget to subscribe and leave us a 5-star review. They mean the world to us and they're what keep us going.
Girl, thanks for being here.